Hey everybody, welcome to episode 11 of Inspect. My guests today are a couple of iOS developers. They're both from the UK, they're both named Dave, and they also host their own podcast called Waiting for Review. We have a catch up about what it's like to be an indie iOS developer, some of the recent updates from this year's WWDC, and we also share some tips and tricks about how we do our podcasting. So without further ado, let me welcome to the show Dave Wood and Dave Nott. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hello.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to have you guys on. So do you guys want to just individually introduce yourself? Because obviously you're both named Dave and that's going to get confusing. So just so less listeners can recognize your voices and distinguish who's who. And from me as well.
Well, I'm Dave Nott. I'm the one from Devon.
And I'm Dave Wood. I'm the one from Leicester.
And obviously, if anyone doesn't know, depending on when you're listening to this show, whether it's on Inspect or on Waiting for Review, my name's Ajay and I'm from Wokingham, which is just sort of west of London.
We're all in the UK.
Yeah, we're all in the UK. It's actually nice to do a show with someone in the UK, again, because the last couple of shows I've done have all been with people in the States. So time zones have always been an issue, and I've had to catch people when they're sort of at work, because I can only really record in the evening.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's just been a lot of juggling with time zones, but yeah, when everyone's in the same country, it's nice and easy.
Yeah, time zones are tough.
How did you two meet? What's the background in how you guys hooked up? Because obviously you're living kind of 200 miles apart.
Well, I think it kind of started when I was on holiday in Italy. We rented this apartment and I was looking for a way to make coffee, and I couldn't really find anything. And then I found this metal thing in the cupboard, which turned out to be a mocha pot, but I didn't know what a mocha pot was. So I went straight to Twitter and posted a picture of it saying, "What is this? And can I make coffee with it?" And Dave replied.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
Yeah, I think I was following Dave already, and we just kind of vaguely added each other because of having sort of similar iOS development interests in common. I think was probably why I followed Dave in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And then coffee is also one of my things. When Dave posted about that, I sort of dived straight in and sort of said, "Hey, yeah, yes, you can. This is how you do it."
So what exactly is a mocha pot? Is that this kind of funnel shaped metal coffee pots that you get?
Kind of like a galvanized looking metal, it screws apart in the middle. You put your coffee in the basket that sits in the middle, heat the water underneath, and then out comes coffee in the top compartment.
Yeah, it comes out sort of pressurized through the inside of it as the pressure builds up, and I guess it's the forcing of the water as steam through the coffee into the top.
So you make it from the bottom upwards?
Water in the bottom, coffee in the middle, and then in the very top of it, sort of through the filter, the actual finished coffee comes out.
Okay. No, I've never tried one of those. I've just got a standard cafetiere, top down.
Well, that's what I was looking for in the apartment, and I couldn't. I was like going through all the cupboards. Oh, there must be one in here somewhere. This is Italy. They love their coffee. Then I couldn't figure out what the mocha pot was for. I felt a little bit stupid now thinking about it. I remember someone tweeted me saying, "Are you serious?" But yeah, we kept in touch, and it just kind of grew naturally from there. I think we both toyed with blogging a little bit, didn't we? We tried to be accountable to one another.
Yeah.
In keeping the blog up to date. I know I failed miserably on that front.
Yeah, that didn't work. But best of intentions and everything else. I think, but the blogging thing and kind of wanting to put something out there like that, I think that's kind of what progressed into us thinking about, and then obviously eventually actually doing the podcast.
Right. Was the blog about iOS development as well?
Both of our blogs are kind of development blogs, and mine is very much a standard kind of slightly abandoned blog these days.
My domain name expired yesterday, actually, so mine's gone now. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's most people who have good intentions of starting a blog, but they soon sort of dwindle away, don't they? It's quite a lot of effort keeping a blog up to date, I find anyway. And I know with the podcast as well, although there is a lot more effort in creating a podcast, it feels like it feels a bit more rewarding, like you're getting some sort of feedback, even if you're not. I don't know. It's just the way I feel about it, because I did start writing a lot more on my blog over the past year or so, but it has kind of faded off as well since I've started the podcast.
Yeah, I think there's something a little bit more immediate about the podcast, and I think having it as something that me and Dave do actively together, a weekly conversation, sort of keeps us turning up. In a way that perhaps trying to be sort of writing buddies wasn't necessarily going to do.
Yeah, I definitely found the blog took up a lot of effort to get it to where I wanted it to be. Whereas I like the way that with a podcast you can it's more conversational, it's a lot more informal, and you can kind of bounce ideas across each other in real time and get a good flow going. And that's what I like about podcasting as a listener and as someone who podcasts.
Yeah. Well, I've got a few more questions about podcasting, which we can get onto a bit later. But for now, I mean, have you guys actually ever met in person, or are you just internet friends?
No, we have met, didn't we? We met when was it you came to Cornwall?
Late March, early April.
Yeah, that was it.
All right, just this year, yeah.
Yeah. So we'd actually, I think we were about maybe 9 or 10 episodes down by that point already. Mm-hmm. And obviously we'd known each other. I think I would trace back actually being actively in contact with each other probably back to your holiday. Pinpoint it, Dave, but in my head I'm sort of thinking about sort of late May last year.
Yeah.
So we'd known each other to talk to quite a bit for quite a long while before sort of starting the podcast back in January. And then we'd actually had the podcast for just under 3 months when we got to meet. So yeah, everything has happened online really before we've actually met in real life.
Okay, so you guys found each other through your love of iOS development, and you're both indie developers, or are you working for companies at the moment? What sort of work are you guys involved in? And that question's to Dave.
This is going to get hard. Feel free to refer to me as Dave W or something if that helps.
So could you Wood and Nott?
So Dave Wood. I'm currently working as a contractor, and that's in iOS development. And you could say, quite legitimately that right now I am independent. I've got my own apps in the App Store, although they're not making a living wage or anything. It's kind of more of a side project sort of level of income really from those. But I'm working as a contractor, and I'm technically free to go and work wherever I want as long as my day rate is getting paid. But just as a frame of reference, I guess, I'm actually going to be starting salaried employment, and we can perhaps get to that sort of later on. But I've got a salaried job that I'm going to go to in a few months' time. So independent for the moment. That's probably going to be changing. I think I'll always keep the side projects on though, and have that sort of aspect of sort of low level indie, even if they don't really amount to very much.
So for me, I'm in the process of setting up an agency for myself, like a web consultancy agency. So I'm doing that in addition to my iOS development, also in addition to kind of looking after our 9-month-old son as well, because we decided to do the shared parental leave, which meant that Heather, my wife, did the first 6 months looking after him, and I've taken the second. So now I'm in the process of kind of ramping up my efforts to start my own company, so I can be making websites for local businesses, and well, not necessarily local businesses, they could be anywhere, but I'm sort of targeting locally at the moment. And I've got the iOS apps to sort of go along on the side.
Brilliant, yeah. Good stuff. Did you get into iOS development back in, like from the beginning when iOS was first released, or what sort of point did you get on board?
For me, what was my first app? I made my first app in 2010. So that was when the iPhone 4 came out. I made a flashlight. because they were all the rage when the iPhone 4 came out and it had a camera flash. So I made one of those, and that felt awesome. I mean, it didn't make a lot of money, because I remember at the time there
didn't the iPhone 3 have a flash on it?
No, I don't think so.
It's terrible, isn't it?
But no, I just loved how the feeling I got that I could make an app and people could download it, and it was a great feeling of the playing field being leveled, because I was in the same store as like EA and all the other AAA publishers, and that was great. And that's kind of what I caught the bug from there, really.
And what was it? What was the learning curve like? Were you quite new to programming at that stage, or what was your experience like?
No, I was very new to anything development wise within the Apple ecosystem. I'd only had a MacBook, one of the sort of white polycarbonate MacBooks, for a year or so by that point, maybe a couple of years. But I was studying computing at that time, so I was learning languages like Java. So things, sort of a lot of the theory that I could pick up through Java, I could apply to iOS. So that helped a great deal. Objective-C looked a little bit weird though when I first looked at it for the first time. I was like, "Whoa, what's going on here? All these square brackets everywhere." That was weird.
So would you say that if you wanted to become an iOS developer, it's worth having previous knowledge of a different back-end language, something like Java?
I think it certainly helped, but I wouldn't say you have to have it. I think now there are so many resources available. I mean, even Apple have supplied the ebook of the programming language of Swift, so you could just pick that up now and start reading and get on the way to becoming an iOS developer. When I first started, I remember the amount of resources being quite limited, just in terms of the tutorial sites and what you could find. Now, you can Google for any type of app followed by the word tutorial, and there'll be a tutorial to show you how to make Angry Birds or whatever, or tons of different things. So now I think is a great time. The resources are incredible, and you should take advantage of them if you're at all interested.
Yeah, I mean, I did give it a little go last year. Before Swift came around, I did have a look at Objective-C, and it just went straight over my head. I didn't. This was quite a few years ago, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, and I didn't have enough of a programming background at that point to wrap my head around it. But now I've tried Swift, and because it's a bit more like JavaScript, I found it easier to understand. And I built one app. I never actually pushed it to the store. It's basically a card game, higher or lower sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, highest card wins sort of thing. And that was just following a tutorial as well. It was by a guy called Chris something. His website, I think, is Code with Chris. And it was quite an easy one. It took probably about 2 hours to put the whole thing together. So it was good. I just never have pursued it, actually.
So you're a front end developer, sort of as the day job, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I work in front end. On the sort of user interface side of things. So building interfaces, HTML, JavaScript.
So really, with that kind of level of understanding of UI and how people use interfaces, if you could couple that with some good knowledge on Swift, you could have a really good combination there of a skill set to do some incredible work, really. Yeah.
Well, I think you guys can inspire me after this once I've found out how easy it is and what your journey was like. Yeah. So have you both got apps in the App Store at the moment?
Yeah. I've got 2 main apps and a few zombie apps that I need to clear out, but yeah.
I've got 2 main apps, and then I've got an iMessage app in the store as well. Although I've not really found the iMessage side of things that successful, to be fair.
What are your apps?
So I've got a video mixing app, which was my first app. I put that into the store back in 2015. It's nearly 2 years old. That lets people mix video in real time, sort of like an A/B mixer. Very similar to sort of DJing, but with video. You can apply effects on each video that's playing and things like that as well. And my second app lets people create kind of like holograms with their phone or with their iPad. So people make these four-sided projector type things that you put on top of the phone, sort of clipped out of clear plastic. And then four-sided videos or photographs, usually with just the same thing on each sort of edge, and then displayed underneath and reflect up onto these projectors. So I've got an app that lets you put any video or any photo, and it puts it onto four sides, and it kind of lets you drop the background of the video or the photo based on how dark or bright it is. So then when it's reflected up, it sort of looks like it's floating like a hologram.
Well, sounds good.
So definitely a video bent with what I do there.
Yeah, have you got a background in video?
Sort of way back when, sort of going back to 2004, pre-wife and kids. I used to mix video in nightclubs with a few friends. It was a bit of a side gig. It certainly wasn't sort of bringing in any particular sort of income, but it was something I did a lot of back then. Really enjoyed, and I think that sort of love of working with real-time video has kind of passed through into what I do now with development.
So out of the apps that you guys have got in the stores, which would you say you're the most proud of? Which is your pride and joy?
For me, I mean, my two main apps. My first one is an app called Armchair. It's a remote control for Kodi. My second app, called Space Readers, is an app to help kids learn to read. So it's a tough call as to which one I'd be most proud of.
They're very different as well.
They are very different, and Space Readers kind of makes me feel good because potentially I'm helping a child improve at their reading. So kind of, the human element there is that's a really nice feeling. On the other hand, Armchair was my first big app, and it kind of started as a labour of love. So I think I'll always hold that one nearest and dearest.
Yeah,
I think, and I get a lot of feedback from users saying that they really enjoy it for its simplicity and its cleanliness compared to the competition, and that is the exact reason why I made it, because I was kind of dissatisfied with the competition in that sense. So to have feedback like that validates the whole journey I've been on. So I think I'd say Armchair if I had to pick one.
Yeah. Okay. Have you guys got any apps in the works? Any plans to release anything else this year, maybe?
I'm doing a big release of Armchair, hopefully that's going to come out this year. It's kind of like a version 3.0. So I'm going to sort of bring it up to date with iOS 11 and a few other cool features.
I've kind of put a lot of my things on hold for the moment. Essentially, life's really quite busy right now. So, I don't know if I'm going to be getting any major updates now before sort of the back end of the year, really, to my existing apps. I have a kind of a plan to do a more pro version of the video mixing app for the iPad. And I would really like to sort of carve the time out for that and be getting on with it. But unfortunately, it's going to have to wait for a little while.
Brilliant. Yeah, good stuff. So you mentioned, you're updating for iOS 11. Obviously, iOS 11 is just announced last week at WWDC. And you guys did, your last show was basically a summary of everything that was announced at that show. But I thought, we could just have a quick, round table of thoughts of what was announced. We don't need to go into too much depth because there are other shows out there that really get into the nitty-gritty of everything that was announced. Have you guys ever been to WWDC before? And what are your thoughts about it?
No, I've never been. It's always been a next year for me thing. Every year for the last probably 4 years, I've been saying, next year, I'll get there next year. But
have you ever applied for a ticket? Because it's like a lottery, isn't it?
No, I've never applied.
No, me either. It's always been sort of far too much money to really justify for a side gig level of interest.
Yeah.
Which is where I was sort of up until about this last year, really. And then again for this year, it just wasn't going to be financially doable. Because it's a lot of money to get out there, really.
Yeah, because the ticket itself is around $1,500, I think, or something like that. And then
That's it,
you got to make your own way there, and then there's accommodation, and then all the obviously other expenses that you'll have there. So you're probably looking at around about $3,000, I would say.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of money.
It's quite a chunk. And I don't think I would necessarily be able to sort of get that through at home in terms of bye, hun, you look after the kids for a week while I go and have fun in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Or San Jose, as it was this year.
Yeah, it's not going to work, is it?
But I'd love to go. I really would.
Yeah, even I'd love to go. I'm not even an iOS developer, but just to sort of be in that auditorium when everything's announced and just get to see, just feel the vibe of it. Yeah, it's something I'd love to do. Yeah, what did you guys think of the announcements this year? Do you want to go through? There were 6 main announcements. Should we just quickly go through all of them?
There was 5 main announcements, I'd argue, because
yeah. All right, number 1 was just a little bit of a
just a spot for Amazon, right? The first one.
Yep. Amazon's coming to the Apple TV.
Do you know what? I don't actually have an Apple TV in the house, but I use Amazon a lot. And one of the things that's always put me off buying an Apple TV is just because that Amazon's not available on there. And Amazon Prime is the main subscription service that I use for TV. So the fact that it's coming now is it's actually making me look that way.
Yeah, I mean, we've always kind of muddled through with AirPlaying to the Apple TV from an iPad or an iPhone, but it's a little bit of a mucky solution.
It is. It's really quite clunky. We watch things with a lot of subtitles, and quite often the AirPlaying doesn't really translate with the subtitles. They just don't make it onto the external display.
Yeah, and you shouldn't have to introduce a third device. You've already got your Apple TV and your actual television as well.
Yeah,
that should be enough to get the job done. But yeah, I don't like the thought of having a dedicated iPad just to sort of stream or an iPhone just to push the content to the TV either.
No,
that's kind of why I shied away from a Chromecast as well. I recently just bought a Fire Stick, Amazon Fire Stick, which is actually really good. I'm really impressed with it, and it's got all the main apps that you need on there. It's got Netflix, it's got iPlayer, it's got obviously Prime, Spotify, things like that. And it connects to my NAS drive as well. So
I think you can put things like VLC on it as well, can't you?
yeah, it's got VLC. It's basically an Android machine, isn't it? So there's a load of Android apps available for it. There's a lot of really weird ones as well, which I don't see why people would have them installed on TVs. It just doesn't make sense. But yeah, the big players are all on there. That's the main thing. But yeah, it's really good.
But the Apple TV's going to be a little bit more of a welcoming environment for you with this Amazon change then.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are an Apple household in terms of the phones that we've got and the computers that we use. But yeah, we just haven't committed to the TV at the moment. That's probably going to be something for this year.
Yeah, I mean, you might get a new Apple TV later this year with maybe 4K.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, for me, it'd be pointless. I've only got a 1080p plasma screen, so yeah, the 4K really doesn't mean a lot to me right now. But
that's a reason to get a new TV, then, isn't it? If you buy this first, and then you just discuss with your wife that, do you know what? It just doesn't look great. We need to get a better TV.
I like your thinking, AJ.
Yeah. So number 2 was the updates to the Watch OS. Are you guys Apple Watch users?
Yeah, I am. You are as well, aren't you, Dave?
Yeah. I mean, I thought OS 4 looked good if you're into fitness. There's some nice updates there. The Siri watch face I thought looked really cool. It's just a shame that they couldn't manage to get it into a complication so that functionality could be used on the different watch faces. That would have been a nice touch.
Yeah, it would seem like that should be the default across the whole of the watch. You shouldn't need a specific watch face just just for Siri features. It's almost like Siri should just be in the background of the watch, always listening and
Yeah.
just ready for your command.
I use the modular face quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So you got that big complication in the middle of the screen. That could potentially be really nice for some kind of Siri complication, but maybe not this year.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I don't really have a huge amount to say on WatchOS.
I thought that was a
So-
fairly small announcement as well. Really, there was the Siri face, there was this the Toy Story face, which is
It seemed pretty incremental, really. I think. Outside of the health stuff.
and even the health stuff. Yeah, the most exciting thing in the health stuff, I suppose, was how it would sync with gym equipment. But that's going to be gym equipment coming out this year. So the fact that the gyms that we're probably members of are not going to see that sort of thing for a couple of years at least.
Yeah.
So it's a nice announcement, but it's very far ahead in the future, the way I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole kaleidoscope face was, I don't know, it just feels a little bit trippy and feels like it could be quite distracting.
Yeah, not particularly majorly useful. I'll have a play with it though when it's out of beta.
Yeah, it's one of those have a play in, but I don't think it's I don't think it was a selling point. It's nice to have an update to your existing watch, but I don't think it will necessarily attract more people to go and buy an Apple Watch because of these sort of new OS 4 features that have been announced.
No, I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah. Then number 3 was obviously the big one, which I suppose everyone was waiting for, was the Macs. So the MacBooks all got a bit of a speed bump. New version of macOS, High Sierra. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about the naming.
Yeah, it was weird because it started off as a bit of a joke, and he was even giggling on stage, and then this little wisecrack about how it's fully baked, and you're just waiting for him to say, "Oh no, we're just joking about that." The way that they, when after I think it was after Lion or was after Mountain Lion, then they were saying that they're going to name the next one Sea Lion, and then dismissed that off stage. But I just couldn't believe that they actually stuck with that name.
It felt like a dad joke that had gone on just slightly too long. Sort of watching it on the night.
Someone quite senior in Apple decided that they wanted to call it that, and no one could say anything.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but it's an incremental change, isn't it? It's in the same way he had Snow Leopard and Mountain Lion.
Yeah.
I mean, the name aside, I'm really quite happy with this release. I think it kind of speaks volumes about the discipline within Apple, in that there must be enormous pressure on all of the software teams, regardless of whether it's iOS, macOS, whatever. There must be huge pressures to keep shipping features no matter what. And to just say, no, we're not going to do that, and we're just going to work on refinements is quite telling, I think. So,
yeah,
hats off.
Yeah, they do need that every now and then as well. There doesn't necessarily need to be new features every single year, even though there were a ton of new features in this one.
Yeah, I think APFS is going to be fairly key to it this year. Safari got quite a bit of attention in terms of the tracking or the anti-tracking they're going to try and do.
Yeah, so they're stopping
how
tracking cookies between websites and things like that.
Yeah, interesting to see how quickly the internet gets around that.
Yeah, because I went to this event recently, and it was about ad blocking, and I know it's a slightly different topic, but what was being said at the event, what the speaker was talking about, was how obviously people are using ad blockers to get rid of these annoying ads, but then the people who are serving the ads are blocking their content if you've got an ad blocker on, right? So like if you go to, say, the New York Times or something, they'll say, "Oh, we noticed you're using an ad blocker. You need to turn it off before you can carry on." But then, people have found a way around that as well, and now you can get blockers which unblock these blockers, and they're constantly sort of fighting against each other. So if Apple are now going to be blocking tracking cookies between websites, I'm sure there will be someone who figures out a way to break through that security as well. But hopefully they've done something quite robust, and it'd be good if you can turn it on and off as well at your own discretion. Because sometimes it's quite handy to have, like if you're viewing a product and you're not quite sure, and then you just get a little reminder about it later on. There have been occasions where that's reminded me that I was looking at something and that I did want to go and actually purchase it, or there was a reason why I put it off at that point, and then I have gone back and purchased as well later on.
It's when you purchase it, that's when you want them to go, isn't it?
Yeah, after that, yeah, don't bother me anymore.
Yeah, I've got a oven glove at the moment that we purchased the other week that keeps haunting me. So every other day, I keep getting adverts pop up for this oven glove, and I'm like, I bought it already. Come on.
Yeah, there you go. That's the issue, isn't it? Yeah, so Safari got a lot of love. They're also stopping like auto-playing videos, which is quite handy. I think Chrome already do that though, don't they?
Oh, I don't know. It's a good question.
I can't remember the last time I saw an auto-playing video anywhere. That's not muted, at least.
That's got me thinking now that.
Yeah, maybe the websites are just themselves being a bit more user-friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the big Mac announcement was the iMac Pro, which is beautiful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Any guesses of how much it's going to cost to get the top spec? I know they said that it's starting around $5,000.
I reckon about 13, possibly more. 13, 14. I think if you go for the 18 core, max out the RAM, max out the SSD. I don't know where they can go with the Mac Pro, though, that they're making as well after this. I mean, clearly this was the thought that when they, at some stage, maybe not too long ago, I think it was quite clear that Apple were not going to remake the Mac Pro. I think this was going to be the replacement for the Mac Pro. But now obviously they've switched gears, and we're still getting this iMac, which is great. But it does make me wonder what on earth can they do with the Mac Pro to top it. I'm sure, I suppose they won't have such a tight thermal envelope compared to the iMac is, after all, a relatively small a device compared to what you could get out of a tower in terms of the cooling you could put through it. So I suppose you could push a Mac Pro sort of harder for longer, maybe.
Well, that's assuming they go for a slightly larger tower style design. They said they're reinventing it. So
yeah, that's true. Maybe I'm thinking too much in the box. Maybe your dream's going to come true, Dave.
What, the Mac Pro Cube?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do with it. Because Apple have always been the type of company who want to make things smaller, lighter, thinner, but it comes at a cost, right? So if they want to make a Pro machine, it's going to have to be slightly bigger, slightly heavier, slightly larger, just an all rounder. I think, but
I think with the Pros, they need to kind of let go of that a little bit.
Yeah,
They need to take a more pragmatic approach.
Yeah, it's definitely not a machine that needs to sit on your desk. It needs to sit under your desk with lots of wires coming out of it, with lots of room to breathe.
It's almost like if you go to a DIY store that's aimed at consumers, it's all very nice and laid out nicely. Whereas if you go to a builder's yard aimed at the trade industry, things are a bit more rough and ready and designed just to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd maybe compare Apple to like that in that sense, in that a lot of the MacBooks and the iMacs are all very consumer friendly, so they're designed to be thin and light and power efficient and all the rest of it. Whereas what we actually, the audience that is going to want the Mac Pro, maybe all that kind of stuff is right at the bottom of their list of priorities. So what they need is something powerful, rugged, versatile, that will get the job done. Yeah,
almost like the old Power Mac G5, just that sort of case, that sort of, maybe not that sort of size, but that sort of shape and idea of a tower, which you can open up and expand as you need to. But yeah, if they can make it around about half the size of that, then that'd be perfect, I think.
Do you see that demo that went around on Twitter?
With the mock-up of the one that sort of swings sideways.
Yeah, sort of pivots in the middle.
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah, something like that would be amazing, but maybe a little bit overkill with the screen on the front and stuff like that. Because again,
maybe
how often do you touch the front of your computer? So that's probably not a necessary thing. But yeah, the shape and size and the way it opens was really cool concept. Yeah, I liked it. But the iMac Pro, like I said, it looks amazing. The fact that it's in black and it's got black accessories. It's going to be one of those things that everyone's going to be drooling over. But it comes at a cost, right? Just like everything.
Doesn't it just?
Yeah. So number 4 on the list was the iPads. Not a massive announcement.
Ooh.
Well, actually, no. No, that's not right. It was a big announcement, but it was more of a software announcement, I would say. Would you
I
say?
think so. Yeah, I think that's probably quite fair. Is that the update to iOS for iOS 11 for the iPad is going to be the sort of game changer for the iPad, really.
Yeah. In terms of just the iPad on its own, I mean, obviously the usual spec bumps and a slightly increased size in the same-ish form factor. Is it exactly the same size as
the smaller one of the two is now a 10.5 inch. It's grown from being 9.7.
But that's the screen, right? 10.5-inch screen. But is the overall body the same size as the 9.7-inch was?
It's a touch bigger, I think, isn't it?
Touch bigger.
Just a little bit, but they've kept the weight the same.
Lot. Yeah.
Have you guys looked into sort of all the features of the new iPads then?
Yeah. I think it's probably a bit unfair to say that it's only a bit of a bump because the screen looks pretty impressive on the new iPad Pros. So it's 120 hertz refresh rate.
Uh-huh.
And it can scale sort of up and down from different refresh rates depending on what's been played back. And I can't make an impassioned argument as to how that makes it any better because I've not really had a chance to play, but
yeah, it'll probably help with battery life, right? Because
I assume so. Yeah, I think it'll be benefits like that. And obviously it'll be absolutely brilliant for scrolling through stuff really quick and just having that responsiveness and that side of things.
Yeah.
So that's going to be really quite cool. I've had a play with one, but I didn't necessarily put it through its paces to really see all those sort of differences. The one I played with in the Apple Store yesterday, it kind of felt a bit weird playing on it with without it having iOS 11 on there already. So it's got iOS 10 on it, and it looked great, but it also felt limited already because I now know what I want the iPad to do. And I've got the beta on my iPad Mini, and I've been enjoying it on there as well. So yeah, it was a bit weird sort of playing with the new iPads, and them sort of still being on the older version of iOS.
What's it like doing the drag and drop? Is it possible to use it with one hand, or do you really need to have two hands on there?
I think on the bigger iPads, you kind of end up naturally having two hands on the go in a lot of ways. One hand to hold, the other hand to move around. But I think it's quite natural just with the one hand.
Yeah. So on the bigger one, it would be a case where you'd need to put the iPad down on a table or on a stand of some sort.
No, I think you just cradle it in one way or another and, hold it with the one hand and use the other hand to move things around.
Okay, because I thought that because you need to use multi-touch to sort of pick items up and then move them around and maybe move apps in the background while you're holding the items that you want to drag. Like you're sort of, I thought you'd need to have multiple touch points on there, so that's why you would need to use two hands on the screen.
Right. Yeah. So for those things, yeah, that's going to feel a bit clunky, and you are going to kind of want to put it down or have it propped up in some sort of fashion, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess when they demoed it all, they were on a flat table, weren't they, with the iPad?
Yeah.
Face
they were,
down.
yeah.
Well, not face down, but yeah.
All right, cool. And so the last thing on the list was the new one, the Siri speaker, which they've decided to call HomePod, which I don't know. It's you got AirPods and now you've got HomePod. Any thoughts on those? What do you think of it? First of all, it's obviously being created as a competitor to things like the Google Home, the Amazon Echo, and they also said against Sonos as well. So do you have any of those devices, and what are your thoughts on those compared to what was announced by Apple?
So I've got an Echo. I've got an Echo Dot, and I think I found the HomePod really quite appealing because I really like the idea of having a small, attractive, good-sounding sound system. And my setup with the Dot, I think it's probably fair to say it is less than elegant. I've kind of got it hooked up to an old amplifier, which is hooked up to an old pair of speakers, which is kind of rigged up on the sort of in the kitchen So it takes up quite a lot of room as well on our counter surface. So it's not great for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
So the idea of having a HomePod would be great because it would, in theory, pack just as good a sound quality as my sort of amp and speaker combo, which take up an awful lot of room. I should add again, and it will deliver the goods through Apple Music. So that'd be good for me. And when I think about what I use my Echo for, it is basically 97% music. So I saw a bit of confusion about why Apple went for music as the big kind of drive behind this device rather than coming at it as a smart Siri control your home kind of device. They really went with the music angle, didn't they? Mm-hmm. And I think that makes total sense given how, if my experience with the Echo is anything to go by, I think they're totally right to do that. I think music's going to be the key to it, and it certainly would be for me.
Yeah, I've got an Echo as well. I've got the main, I've got the big Echo in the lounge downstairs, and then I've got a Dot up in the bedroom, and it's the same for me actually. Although I do use some of the smart home stuff, I use it to control some lights and heating, and I use it for things like news briefings and checking the weather and setting timers and things like that. But again, the main thing is to play music. So I've got mine playing from Spotify, and so I understand why Apple have gone down that route of taking on the music industry first. And I think just Siri just on its own it's not the greatest assistant at the moment anyway. So to push Siri as the main feature, they would have to really improve Siri first.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and they've got they've got music nailed already. So why not make that the selling point?
It's a great companion product to Apple Music as well, isn't it? So they stand to gain a lot there. And it might, if I were to get one, I would re-enable my Apple Music subscription because I cancelled it due to getting the Dot because I've just been using the Amazon Prime Music.
Yeah,
so I thought I'd save myself the money on the Apple Music and just make do with that. And it's starting to get a little bit samey at the moment. I've got to be honest. The library isn't that big on it.
Yeah, I've got mine through Spotify, which is probably a much bigger library than Amazon. Probably even bigger than Apple, I would say.
Probably. I think I've got as it stands by using what comes with our Prime subscription. I think we get about 1 million tracks. And then it says if you want to upgrade to tens of millions, you need to pay us, I think it's about £4 a month per Dot. But it kind of works at the moment where I'll just say, Dingus, play some music. And then it will say, here's a station you might like. It's always the same handful of things that it recommends me, like Fleetwood Mac or Queen or the Eagles. Yeah. So it's like, oh, okay, this again. That's fine.
So 1 million songs is not enough for you?
I think discoverability is a problem. I find the iOS app that comes with it is just dreadful. I find it a real pain to use.
You probably need to just put in a bit of time to create your own playlist on Apple Music first, and then maybe next time you say, play me some, I don't know, some R&B music.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Your playlist as a preference over their own generated playlists.
Yeah, I need to put in some time to invest in that, and yeah, I might see some dividends.
Yeah, I don't know whether Amazon's music has the concept of liking and favoriting, but I guess if you start telling Amazon what sort of music you like, it will eventually start playing you more and more of the stuff that you like rather than just what it thinks you might like.
Yeah, I haven't actually found that feature, and it hasn't sort of proactively presented it to me in the same way that Apple Music did when you first sign up to it. It's like, tell us about all what you like, and press this if you like a certain song, we'll play more like it. I certainly haven't had that level of experience from it so far.
Yeah, because to be an AI, it needs to have some sort of intelligence about what you like before it can actually serve you properly. So,
I mean, right now I'm just listening to podcasts so much. I've got more than I can actually listen to with the time I have. So,
yeah,
just when I'm pottering around in the kitchen, just getting the Dot just to play some random music, even if it is the same few playlists that it always seems to choose from. That's kind of fine for me for right now.
Yeah. So you definitely you would get a HomePod, even at that price point that was announced of around $350 or pounds.
Yeah, it's going to be £350, isn't it? I think by the time it gets to us.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really nice. We are kind of toying with the idea of maybe giving the kitchen a little bit of a facelift. So maybe a kind of budget for a HomePod within that as well. Maybe cut down on some of the other things in the kitchen for a HomePod.
Yeah. And how about you, Dave? What do you think of it overall? What about the design of it?
I really quite love the design, to be honest. And it sort of feels to me, we were saying this the other week, that it sort of felt a bit like a return to Apple's kind of old design ethics in some ways, just in terms of its material, isn't it, as well as metal.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of looks and feels a little bit different to some of their other products right now. And I quite like that. Would I want to get one at that price point? Probably not right now, to be honest with you. I think I'm actually quite different in terms of my approach to listening to music at the moment. I'm not really sort of into the whole idea of using one of these kind of voice activated speakers. So yeah, probably not for me at the moment.
You should invest in an Echo Dot, and it's quite a low price point to find out what sort of experience it is.
Yeah.
Because once you do start just asking your house to play some music for you, it does feel very natural, and you soon do get quite used to just not having to reach for your phone just to play some music.
Yeah, it's very compelling. I'll say that much for it. It is very, very compelling.
Yeah, I do like it. So one of the questions I've had on my notes is, if you guys could run Apple for a day and decide what they do next, what sort of product would you push for next? Have you given it any thought?
I didn't come up with a product as such. I came up with a couple of features I'd like to see.
Okay.
One of which being some decent App Store trials. I think that'd be good. Because when I look at my dock on my Mac right now, I see quite a few apps that I spent quite a bit of money on, and all of them, with the exception of maybe one, came from a 30-day trial.
Right.
You go to anything online, any kind of subscription, like you hear another podcast ads, don't you? Go to soandso.com / and then get a 30-day trial.
Yeah.
That just makes so much sense to me if that could happen on the App Store.
I read some rumors that was going to be introduced.
I did see on one of the word cloud slides in WWDC extended free trials or something. I've been trying to dig into what that actually is.
I saw that was referring to subscriptions.
That's what I thought it meant.
Yeah, it would
that
be
is
great
that is
if you
where
could
it ends.
sort of try before you buy sort of thing. Because I don't know if Android still do it, but I know they used to, where you used to have like 24 hours to return an app, basically, and get refund if you didn't like it.
Yeah.
I don't know, do they still do that, Android? Any ideas?
I couldn't tell you.
No, they used to. This is like the last time I had an Android, I think they was on version 2 or 3. So it was quite a while ago. And you could, if it was a paid for app, you could download it, you would get charged like 24 hours later. So you had that 24-hour window to basically delete the app and say you don't want to be charged and then not have the option to download it again.
I think it's a good way to encourage people to spend sort of proper money on proper apps.
Yeah.
And then that encourages developers to make really good full-featured apps for iOS, and I think that has to be a good thing. I mean, imagine if you were to go on the App Store and you saw an app for that was a high-quality app for whatever it may be. Let's say it's £15. That's quite a lot to spend on an app, and I'm not sure I could spend £15 on an app just on the basis of reading the app description page.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
But then if it had a try button next to it, and I knew that try button meant that I could have it on my iPad or iPhone for 15 days, 30 days, whatever they decide to do, probably by the time I've been using that app for long enough and it's become a part of my workflow, it's probably going to cost me more than the app's worth to kind of restructure my workflow to accommodate something new. So by that point, I'm probably going to, especially if I like the app, go ahead and buy it. I think it has to be a net win for the ecosystem as a whole if they did introduce that. I can't really see many bad reasons.
I think so. I'd back Dave very strongly on that. Obviously, sort of coming from my point of view as a developer as well. I think kind of calling back to the iPad stuff again, actually, is that if the iPad is going to become even more viable now with the new changes that are coming with iOS 11, then I think things like sort of trial periods and that sort of thing are going to be absolutely essential to sort of get the quality of app that you're going to want to have if you're using an iPad as your main computer. That is going to... There's going to be an overhead to producing good quality iPad software, because you could, at the moment, just make an iPhone app and kind of make it work on a bigger screen for the iPad, and that's it, done. But if you're really going to take advantage of all the new stuff, the drag and drop, and the fact that apps can kind of scale almost to any size now, you've got to kind of think about the idea that you might not have the screen space that you thought you had, even on the iPad as well. If those apps are going to be created and do well and exist for the iPads, then as developers, we are going to need things like the ability to be able to offer trial periods to kind of get people in through the front door.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting because I think that's going to naturally push iPad software sort of closer to the old desktop models at times. And I'm not sure that we have all the tools we need yet as developers to really be able to sort of do that sort of pricing. Because not everything should be freemium with a subscription. I'm not sure that works for every single class of app.
Yeah.
And then, having a lack of a good trial period then kind of cuts out the other sort of app where you would actually potentially naturally pay, quite a bit after that trial period to sort of keep it on. I'd like Dave to run Apple for a day and make that change.
Happy to oblige.
There you go. That's the next job. So the current job is podcasting. So we touched on it a little bit earlier. But yeah, if we could just, I thought we could have a bit more of a chat about how you guys got started and what your process is. And, we're both in the same position at the moment, both fairly new to podcasting. You guys started in January, I think it was?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so you guys have just had your 20th episode last week. Last week I had my 10th episode, so...
Double digits.
Yay.
That's it, finally made it to double digits, yeah. So were you guys expecting to make it to 20 when you started? Did you have a goal in mind of how long you want to be doing this, or was it just carry on going for as long as possible?
I think so. For me, yeah. I mean, I hope we'd get to 20. I hope we'd get to 50 and to 100 and on and on. I've been listening to podcasts now probably since September 2014. When I first started, I wasn't really sure what they were. I kept seeing Marco Arment dropping links to ATP all over Twitter, so I ended up just clicking one to see what it was. And as soon as I started listening, I knew that at some level, someday, I'd like to contribute to podcasting in some way. And I like the fact that I can sort of jump on a mic once a week and have a chat to Dave about what's been going on and soundboard a few ideas and hopefully provide some value to people listening. That's great. Long may it continue.
Yeah, so ATP was the first introduction to it, was it?
Yeah. I just stumbled across an episode probably just before the iPhone 6 was announced. Mm-hmm. And that show kind of introduced me to podcasting as a whole. I didn't really know what it was. I'd heard it mentioned. I think the BBC do a few podcasts, and I'd heard them plugging them on like Radio 2 and Radio 1, things like that. but I wasn't really sure what they were. And yeah, when I heard ATP for the first time, I was like, oh yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah, my first introduction to podcasts on regularly was one called Developer T by Jonathan Cottrell. Again, just found it via one of his tweets that he had shared. I had listened to some podcasts before a few years ago, but there was nothing that I'd actually ever subscribed to. It was just I'd heard the odd show here and there. Mainly music podcasts rather than actual spoken word ones. So like mixes from various DJs and things like that.
I was going to say that was kind of how I came into podcasts, sort of way back when as well.
Via the music route.
Dance mixes, that sort of thing. Which you don't get so much of now, do you? That's not really a thing in the same way.
No, there's not as many. Yeah, I think I got into things like Pete Tong and some of the other Radio 1 DJs used to have like their a roundup of the best of the month or something like that, whatever the current playlist was.
Yeah.
And I used to not subscribe, but I used to download some of those onto my phone and use them for my commute. But yeah, when it came to actual sort of spoken word podcasting and especially tech podcasts, which is mainly what I listen to now, it was Developer T was the first one that I subscribed to, and then from there I got introduced to a few of the other ones that I listen to now, like some of the other shows on the Spec Network, ATP, and a few like comedy ones which I listen to as well. But yeah, I got into about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago as well. And like yourselves, it was something that I always felt like I'd love to give it a try. I was never really a natural speaker in front, public speaking in front of a crowd. So it was one of those things I wanted to sort of challenge myself into doing. And I started mid-March. So I'm on. Yeah, this is going to be episode 11. So yes, so far so good.
Awesome.
But what's your sort of process like? How did you sort of get set up, and did you do a lot of research into how to set the podcast up or how to record, and what was your experience like?
I spent quite a while researching mics, and then I think at the last minute when we were going to record the morning, we decided we were going to record. I think we both panicked and just bought Audio Hijack.
Yeah.
Just to record audio on each end. So much like we're doing for this show, we'll record our own audio tracks, then I'll send mine over to Dave, and you'll put together an edit, and then we'll pretty much get a show out of it.
So I take both of our feeds. We record them as high quality. Is it AIFF
That's
files?
It,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's lossless, isn't it? And I bring those straight into GarageBand, and then I do the editing there. So it's really not that complicated, to be honest. I like the way GarageBand works for that. I think I do a little bit of post-production. I kind of try and set the levels, make sure that we're both balanced, things like that. Add a couple of noise gates and stuff like that to try and cut any background noise out. But it's been interesting, actually, as a process, because the first few episodes, they were a bit rough and ready, I think, in a lot of ways. If I go back and have a bit of a listen now, I'm probably going to kind of feel a little bit shocked, because I think the quality's come on as we've gone on. And then I think there was probably a middle period where I was spending quite a lot of time on sort of getting the edits as good as I possibly could. And now these days I can kind of crank things out relatively quickly, because I've got a process. I have my previous project and I drag the new files into that one, and I sort of start with where things left off before. And that sort of makes it easier to turn around the edits each week as well.
Yeah, it does get better over time. Even my first few, I was spending like hours on the edit trying to get it all perfect. But then you soon get all your keyboard shortcuts in, and you sort of remember your settings from last time, and even just actually recording, the way you're speaking, and you make less mistakes, and you become a bit more comfortable on the microphone as well over time. And my my editing time for a 1 hour podcast is down to, I spend about an hour and a half doing some post-processing on it now. Whereas before I was probably spending at least double that.
I think it helps me with our edits, actually, that we sort of hold, because it's a conversation every week with the same person, and me and Dave have got our format down for the show now, really. It helps me because, we have each week is kind of similar to edit in a lot of ways. The process is not too different, really.
Yeah.
So that's kind of helped get my editing times down to, I reckon, probably somewhere around about half an hour now.
Okay, no, that's really good.
For a sort of 40, 45-minute show.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think this one's going to take me a little bit longer just because of the three-way conversation, and just to make sure that, there's no crosstalk and the mics all of our levels are sounding similar. Obviously, there's just that one extra person to consider now, isn't there? And because I haven't done shows with a regular person, I've had lots of different people on the show. Their setups have varied quite a lot as well. Some people have used headset mics, some have got condensers, some have got dynamic mics.
Yeah.
I had one person just using the built-in microphone on their laptop as well. So yeah, generally, with a little bit of EQing, they sound okay. It doesn't need to sound like a studio broadcast or anything like that. As long as it's clear and concise and people can understand what each person's saying, I'm quite happy with that.
I did see some benefit a few weeks back in upgrading my mic, though.
What are you using now?
So I'm using it's an ATR 2100 USB mic. So it's made by, is it Audio Technicana?
Yeah.
And before I had one of the blue snowball mics, and the difference between the two is quite a big difference, I think, really.
Right.
But the mic I have now was actually an accidental purchase. I managed to, I was browsing Amazon last thing sort of before going to sleep, which I really shouldn't do, and I don't really do that often. And I was putting things into my basket to sort of have a look in the morning. I kind of queued a few things up to look at. And when I got up the next morning, I had an email telling me, your new microphone is on its way, and had that sort of whole moment of, oh, okay. Well, I hope I've bought the right one.
Yeah, I hope I haven't spent £3,000 on a microphone.
Yeah, that was a bit of a tricky moment for a second.
Yeah,
but it came off good. It's definitely the better mic.
Yeah. Well, it sounds pretty good on my side. I'm using I've got the Blue Yeti. So I was looking at the Snowball for a while, but then I don't know, it just felt a bit too entry level. I thought, let me just invest a little bit more and go for the Yeti. I got it second hand, so I actually got it cheaper than I would have got the Snowball for in the end.
Right.
And I really like it. I've got a windshield on it, even though I don't really need that, but it was either that or a pop filter, and I ended up putting a windshield on it.
Yeah.
And I've built myself a little portable sound booth. I'll send you guys a picture of it afterwards. It's on my Instagram page. So
you should link it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, I'll link it in the show notes as well. So basically, all it is, it's a box. It's like a storage box called a Droner from IKEA, and it's one of these folding ones that slides into their storage units. And it's one of those, and I've glued some foam tiles on 4 of the sides, and I'm just sitting the mic in there, and the mic fits perfectly inside it. So it's just basically deadens the sound from all around, and it's made a massive difference. Like the first couple of shows I did, I used just a mic just on the table, and I was recording in my kitchen, and I had I could hear the hum from the fridge, and I could hear the echoing in the kitchen and stuff like that. And then I built this box, and since then it doesn't really matter which room I'm in the house. It just sounds like I'm in a vocal booth almost. So
that's awesome. I could do with one of those.
Yeah, really easy to create, low cost. Really, really nice. So definitely recommend making one of these if you've got the parts lying around. So yeah, I'll send you some pictures of it. All right, guys. Well, yeah, it's been great. It's been really good talking to you guys, and we can wrap it up there. But before we go, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me, or anything that you'd like to plug, or your social accounts, your websites?
Yeah, sure. One quick question I had for you was, as like a front end UI guy, would you have any advice to give to a programmer looking to learn more about design? Maybe a particular resource you might recommend?
I suppose it depends on what your experience of front end is. If you already know what you're trying to achieve, then you probably just want to learn some new tricks. So I'd probably go onto sites like CSS Tricks, go into CodePen and see what cool things people are producing there, and then you can see their code and you can see how they're achieving things. There's loads of front end courses. One of my previous guests, Wes Boss, he does loads of courses, especially on JavaScript. So that could be a place to start. If you're a complete novice and you haven't got any sort of design experience, the thing with design is it's quite subjective. It's hard to say what's good design and what's bad design. It's I think if it feels good to you, so if it looks good to you, then it is good design, isn't it? So I would just keep experimenting, just play about with some of the tools. There's some, there's obviously paid design tools out there like Photoshop and Sketch, but then there's free alternatives that you can get, and there's things like Figma, which I think has got free trial. I don't know how limited it is, but it's a good way to sort of just play around with vectors and page layout and getting colors and fonts and shapes onto a screen and just seeing what you can do with them. And then with some of these tools like Figma and Sketch, you can also export your design, some elements of your design, into code as well. So you can create HTML and CSS from your design work as well. So it sort of lowers that barrier to entry.
Cool.
Yeah, CodePen's a pretty good place to experiment because it's got minimal setup. You don't need to create any sort of local environments. You just fire up the site. You can write your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript all in one place, and you can see a live preview of what's going on as well. And there's so much inspiration on there. So yeah, that's definitely a place I would start.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. So anything that you guys wanted to plug before you go? Yeah, let people know where they can find out more about you guys and your podcast as well.
Yeah, so for me, you can find me personally on Twitter at _Dave Nott. My remote control for Cody you can find at armchair-remote.com. My second main app, Space Readers, the app I spoke about earlier, about helping kids learn to read, you can find at spacereaders.com. And then our podcast is, you can find us on Twitter at WFR Podcast.
You can find me at Twitter on DW RoboHeads. That's DW and then RoboHead with a Z at the end of it. You can find my video mixing app at govj.tech. And my abandoned blog is over at davewood.uk.
Okay, nice one. Yeah, and once again, as always, all the different things mentioned in the show and all these links mentioned at the end will all be in the show notes, which can be found at inspect.fm on the homepage. And yeah, I'd just like to say thanks again for being on the show. And yeah, it'd be good to have a catch up with you guys again in the future. And all the best with your podcast and all the best with the move to New Zealand and your apps that you got in the store.
Thanks a lot, AJ.
No, thanks, AJ. This has been absolutely brilliant. Thanks ever so much.
My pleasure. All right. Have a good one, guys. See ya.